This lesson is called the Priority of Discipleship. And there are 4 key points in this lesson. The first point to remember is that the priority that Jesus gave his disciples was not to evangelize, but it was to disciple. And we think, what? We thought that the priority was to evangelize. Well, actually, when you think about how Jesus discipled, he didn't demand that people were born again first, but he first invited them to follow him. And as they followed him, they began to discover who he was and believed in him. And before Jesus went to heaven, his last command to his disciples, his last instruction was that they disciple like he did. And so he gave the Great Commission, and that commission was to go into all the world and disciple. Now, evangelism comes into that process, but our thinking needs to be that the Jesus priority to us was to disciple. And the second point is that when we mix those priorities up, and when we put evangelism first as our priority, we greatly weaken the advance of God's kingdom. And you say, what? Yes, because when we focus only on evangelism, and we think that's the priority, we often think that it's such an urgent cause that we don't have time to disciple. And we evangelize and people are born again, but they stay babies. And babies don't change the world. The third point is that discipleship is not just teaching content. Discipleship is teaching people to obey, to live as Jesus called us to live. And when we focus just on content, people may know content, but that doesn't mean their lives are changed. And so we need to focus on discipleship, which focuses on living the way that God called us to live. And the fourth point is that discipleship can be measured. And the way we measure it is by comparing the disciples' way of life to Jesus' way of life. And so, how do we know someone is a disciple? It's because they increasingly look like Jesus. As we compare their life to Jesus, we need to be able to see a progressive convergence between the life of the disciple and the life of Jesus. It doesn't have to be perfect. Even the Apostle Paul, at the end of his life, said, I have not yet arrived. What was he saying? He was saying that he was still in the process of becoming like Jesus. So in summary, the 4 points, the key points of this lesson are: number 1, that the priority Jesus gave us, his disciples, was to disciple. The second point is that when we reverse that priority and we focus first on evangelism without discipleship, we greatly weaken the advance of God's kingdom. And number 3, discipleship is teaching people to do or to be what Jesus commanded us to be. And the fourth point is that discipleship can be measured by comparing the disciples' life and way of living to that of Jesus. And that doesn't happen all at once. It's progressive. And through our life, if we are a disciple and the people we are teaching are becoming disciples, it means they increasingly look like Jesus.